presentation, Investigator Mark Skidmore with the Giles County Sheriff's Office to talk about the mystery at Mountain Lake and the solving of the mystery of remains that were found at the bottom of the lake in 2008. After his presentation, you're welcome to view the artifacts found, ask questions, and also to have refreshments. And after tonight, the artifacts will be on display for the next month at the Giles County Historical Society, so please feel free to come view those exhibits and our other exhibits there as well. Again, thank you all for coming.
Okay.
Mark Skidmore.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Now, I tend to walk around a lot when I talk and things like that, so just kind of follow me around. If there's something you want me to repeat or whatever, just raise your hand. How many of y'all have heard about the mystery of Mountain Lake? I hope about everybody has, yeah. A little bit about me. I'm Mark Skidmore. I was born and raised in Nares. Went to Bradford University, did a little tour in the Navy. I've been now with the Sheriff's Department since 1989. And there I work as the IMCSI Giles County. It's not like it is on TV. And I've worked every kind of crime from mailbox vandalism to capital murders and everything in between. Without a doubt, this is the most fascinating, most intriguing case I have ever worked. I'd like to see it get picked up by a TV show or something. I mean, I think you will too. Anyway, we call it The Mystery at Mountain Lake. The story begins back in September of 2008. Mountain Lake had pretty much gone dry by that time. Buzz Scanlon's here, he's the manager of the hotel up there. They had found out that this is somewhat of a geological anomaly. It happens on a cyclic, every so many hundred years. I think it goes dry. Then it goes back up. He was telling me now the water now is back about 40 feet deep. Going about 110, 120, somewhere in there. This is what Mountain Lake looked like in September of 2008. For reference, you'll see the rock here, the boathouse. Zoomed in on them a little bit. See how the top of the rock is kind of gray? That is your normal water level. They call this the boathouse. It's got a dock that comes out over the water, normally. This rock face, the lake side here, the bank, is probably every bit of that steep. I mean, you can't walk on it. And I was telling somebody earlier when we were out here doing our thing, a lot of the sightseers had come around and they were, there was some man and his wife got about 2/3 of the way up on the rock, up on the bank. They were walking their way around the lakefront. He lost his footing and he started to stumble. So what does this man do? Reaches up, grabs a hold of his wife, and he launches her head over heels. Remember on the ABC Sports, the skier that did the head over heels thing? That's what she looked like all the way down. I would not want to be that man. This is another view from down at the far end. This is looking back at the hotel, and right off the bat, you can start to see where, in the lake, there's not a whole lot of water movement in that lake. And there'll be a lot of silt and mud at the bottom of it. And as it dried out, of course it settled down and then it started breaking up into blocks and stuff. And it was really kind of neat. It was like walking on the moon. Now you can see I don't have a small foot by any means. And this was the gap between the little blocks as it dried out. It was, times 8 or 9 inches wide. Here is the actual lake as it was on a particular day. I would say you probably put it in that corner of the room right there. It was quite small. You can see the hole at the far side where the lake was going down and hear it. And I tell people that you could easily have plugged the hole with a 50-pound bag of dog food. It's not a huge hole at all. Here's another shot. This is looking across the lake at the bottom, looking up toward the boathouse, and everybody kind of marvels at that boat sitting there on the bottom. Mm-hmm. One of my guys says he remembers seeing an old picture of a lady in the boat like that, with a parasol. Yeah. was almost just placed there. And of course, a lake like that's been around forever. It's been, there's all kinds of trash in there, and the usual stuff, It's an old Dr. Pepper can. Thing that caught my eye about this, those little triangle holes, this made with a church key, the old can opener.
Yeah.
You have to, and had the logo, the 10, 2, and 4. Anybody remember that?
Yeah.
What was that for?
10 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and 4
So
o'clock.
3 times a day you're supposed to have one. Exactly right. Rich Brow Beer. It was brewed and packaged in Richmond, Virginia. If you go over to downtown Richmond on Carey Street, downtown, there's still, that's where the brewery was. And you still see they got their old sign hanging up there. But a couple things were neat about it is the tax stamp was printed right on top of the can, which you also opened using your church key. But how cool is that? Another old boat. I asked Buzz and the rest of them at the hotel, why don't you go down and get that, bring it up and put it on display. They said they considered it, they went down and looked at it, but it was so brittle that just any movement at all, it would just crumble. This is Tommy Gottier. He's one of our investigators, and Eric Quates, he's another one of us. We're just looking at stuff. Okay, here we go. The story starts pretty much here. September the 20th, 2008. Tim Dalton and his son found an old pair of shoes in the boat. They were just out looking around, finding old bottles and cans and musket balls, everything. They, also looked around a little bit more and found, as I understand it, they found what they thought was a piece of a turtle shell. They thought, oh, this is kind of cool. And they looked a little more and started finding some longer bones. They said, this might be human. Turns out it was. So they called us. This was on a Saturday evening, if I remember right. Is that right, Buzz? So I was actually in Claypole Hill at a craft show, do woodworking and stuff. So I told the guys, just, rope it off as best you can. We'll hit it back in the morning. And I got on the phone with the medical examiner's office in Roanoke. And so we came up, and the next morning started looking around, started finding all kinds of things. Lots of cloth, pieces of cloth just everywhere. A whole pocket knife, more bones. Paul Benson is one of the medical examiners down in Roanoke. He actually came up to the site. There you see Tommy and Eric again. Dr. Benson walked up and he looked at that. Says, we need some more help on this. So we called Dr. Cliff Boyd. He is a professor of anthropology at Radford University. I've worked with Dr. Boyd, but he and his wife they both have the same job. They both do the same thing. And they are incredible people. They come out and help me on several scenes when we get some bone fragments and stuff like that. He came to the site and he did basically a archaeological dig, like he seemed to do over in the ruins over in Egypt and stuff. And one thing's kind of neat. If you notice this dark spot, there's nothing on it. There's nothing been added by us. What that is the body. There's a lot of fats and stuff in it. And as it decomposes, it stains, and those fats leach into the soil. And you can actually look and tell kind of where he was there. So we find all these interesting things. Dental crowns, ring, some old coins, belt, shoes, you name it. We found pretty much all of it. Kind of give us a puzzle now we've got to try and solve. First piece of the puzzle, of course, we've already talked about a little bit, is the shoes. I took a good look at them. A pair of brown leather men's, just wingtip shoes, just shoes. It's kind of neat, the stitching was out of them, but other than that, the shoes are in amazing good shape. They're over here on the table. Look at the underside of it. You can see where something's here in the middle and on the heel. Zoom in a little bit. This is says McCreary. That was a department store in New York City, and they had their own branded shoes. On the heel, Sullivan's safety cushion heel. He'd had the shoes rehealed sometime. And that was about it. So put the pieces together. We got a pair of men's leather wingtip shoes that were sold by a store that was in New York City. And not much else. Next clue.
How did you find out they were from New York? What?
They were all, well, get on there and just start searching. And a lot of this is, I took a little bit of creative liberty as far as the order that things happened. We found the shoes, and then later, I think once we found out he was in New York City, when we started looking McCreary, New York, and we started finding a department store that was in existence back then, and they had all this other stuff. And there were so many people that helped us identify different parts of this that I don't know if I can list them all. So, next thing we find is a watch. It is a Waltham watch. It's made of gold.
Good watch.
Yes, very good watch. What do you see inside of it? The hands were gone, but you can still see they were still in there. At least one of them was. The face of the watch had a B and then either an F or a P over here. Above it and smaller was an M, and then there was something out there. You couldn't tell what it was. Flip the watch over. There's a little panel here for monogram. Nothing on it. Somebody told me that you can flip the back of it open, that they're hinged right along the bottom here. Flip the back of it, there's a serial number in there. Really? Yeah. So, I flipped the back open, and lo and behold, there's a serial number, 951912. Hop on the internet, start looking at these databases of Waltham pocket watches. This watch was made in 1876. Somebody else told me that that inside cover pops open, it's hinged in the same place. You could open it, and that if a jeweler had worked on that watch, that oftentimes they would make a little mark on the inside of that inside door. So what we hoped there was I could flip it open, find a mark, and be able to identify it, and that there's some jeweler somewhere that has, his grandfather may have worked on this, worked on this watch back in the early 1900s, and might have a record of it, a serial number or something. But we look, and you can see where it says warranted 25 years. I don't think it's under warranty anymore. But no jeweler's marks, so swing and a miss. The neat thing about it was this watch, just after being underwater for all these decades, it almost looked like, with the exception of the spring that rusted away some, but it almost looked like you could put a couple drops of oil in there and wind it up and it'd take right off. So, putting the pieces together about the watch. It's a Waltham gold pocket watch. A B and either an F or a P on the face with an M and something else above it. The owner would have been a wealthy person in all likelihood, because this thing was made of gold. And how many people, had gold pocket watches back then? How many people have gold watches now? Next clue we have is a cigarette case. It's a sterling silver, engraved, very finely hand-tooled cigarette case. Flip it over, there's a pretty ornate monogram on the back. And this gave us this kept us busy for a few days, trying to figure out just what these initials were. And so what we wound up doing, took a picture of it, and we would color in each letter individually, and that made it kind of stand out apart from the others. This one we got through pretty easy. We figured this is an S. Everybody see that kind of? This is the dark, yeah, good. The last one, this is an old cursive F. Remember how the teacher used to get you to make the cross member and then the big long swoopy thing that came down, and then the cross member? But this middle letter had us going all over the place. Is this a capital G here with a lot of swoopy stuff? Is it a lowercase g? Is it a J? Is it a C? Is it, who knows? Some little tricks I tried there is I would type the entire alphabet in Microsoft Word and then change the font and just look through. Does anything there look similar? Is anything? The Edwardian script is the closest I found to this.
That's called Edwardian?
Edwardian, E-D-W-A-R-D-I-A-N, Edwardian script. So, we now know that the first initial on the box was an S, and the last one was an F. Now, monograms, let's think about that for a second. What's the order of the letters on a monogram usually? Usually your last initial's in the middle. So we didn't know, but we knew that the first one on there was an S, the last one was an F. We know that this was custom made. I actually found a dealer, or an antique collector expert on antique cigarette cases and ladies' compacts, and she said that this thing would have been made at sold at Saks Fifth Avenue or Tiffany's in New York City. That the person that would have had this would have been somebody of great wealth. That this is not something that anybody would just have. It's made out of sterling silver, which also points to money. Starting to see a little thread here, are we not? Yeah, this guy's got some jack. Okay, coins. Found several coins there with the bones and stuff. Newest of which was this $50, which was a 1920. So because it's dated 1920, we know that the guy died at least in 1920 or later, because otherwise we couldn't have that coin. Have some antique coin experts come in. They examined these. What they actually did is they examined the feathers on the wings, and they said with a coin like that, and it was freshly minted, that the feathers will have a whole lot of real fine detail in them. That the longer it's being carried around in people's pockets, it wears smooth. And based on that, they said this coin had been in circulation no more than 3 to 5 years at the most. Putting our pieces together, that's like I said, the newest coin was 1920, 3 to 5 years. So now we have a window of time that we're looking at based just on these coins. 1920 to 1925. One of the things I did is I went around to people in my department, and once I convinced them I wasn't going to steal their money, I said, let me see the change in your pocket. See how old the coins are that you carry on with you now. And kind of get an idea of what we're looking for here. Next little clue we had was a belt. This is a brown leather belt. Actually on the other side of here it's stamped 32, a size 32. Rules me out. Sterling silver belt buckle with a monogram on it. That looks strikingly familiar, does it not? A little bit simpler, of course. Now this is in a little area that's an inch wide or less. No other markings on it that we could find. So, sterling silver belt buckle, size 32, which tells me it's a small guy, wealthy small guy. Same monogram as the cigarette case. And once again, anybody that has money. Found 2 dental crowns. We looked at these and I started doing some checking. I actually found a forensic dentist. Yes, they do make those. And I met with this guy, Dr. Cagney, met with him down in Roanoke. And he examined this and he said that basically this is consistent with the materials, the adhesives, the design. This is consistent with something they would find in early 1900s, turn of the century type dental work. He also said something which will really, really surprise you. He said that only somebody that was really wealthy would have one of these, much less 2. Back then, tooth went bad, they just had it pulled. So this guy had 2 of these things. Like I said, materials, construction, adhesive, and all that. There were 2 of them found, very expensive. And brings us to the next one. Now this is the ring This is probably the one item that got the most press. This was actually picked up, it was on the national networks and stuff like that. It's a gold ring, has a reddish kind of stone in it. The stone was busted, and to this day I haven't figured out exactly how that could be. Because, you know, well, he did work for a living, believe it or not. He was a telephone man. My buddy back here. So we looked at this. This was pretty easy to figure out the first one. It was a 0. But we, because it was broken and somewhat offset, we didn't know if this was a 1, if this was a 3, if it was a 4, is it a 7 that's offset a little bit? We were all over the place. We couldn't figure that out. So photographed it from different angles to see. You know, this one looked more like a 3 than anything, in my opinion. Finally, this is the picture that brought it out to me. That's an 04. Well, it's obvious to me that it's not 2004. So I knew I was looking at somebody from 1904. On one side of the ring, there is an M and a C. Then there's this cloud with an anchor kind of thing dangling down between. And on the other side, there's a letter C and an A. Again, got your cloud and anchor thing. Look inside the ring, there's a letter B with a star in it. Then the letters G, D, or G period, D period, and then CO. That's the Balfour Gold and Diamond Company. It's they're still in business today. They're a part of the art carved business, I think. Look here, right behind the stone, and you can see where there's some initials scratched in there. Couldn't really see, so I tried most of, and a lot of the examinations we did on this actually were done on photographs of, because it was so small or so faint that you couldn't see it with the naked eye, even with a magnifying glass. So what I do is I take a photograph of it, blow it up on my computer screen, and then I would look at that to actually do my exam.
Did you take those photographs?
Yeah, these are all my work. Tried it with a different flash, completely lost it there. Tried a different angle, and lo and behold, this one worked out really good. This one, the last initial, is obviously an F, and you can see where there was something here that was some type of a round bottom letter. We looked and looked to see if we could see any more of that letter, and we couldn't. We didn't know if it was a J, an O, a C, a cursive A. There are quite a few. So, we know he's a 1904 graduate from somewhere. Who knows where. First initial is a round bottom letter. I've got a whole bunch of them listed there. Last one is definitely an F. On the sides, it had that MC and CA. So we start thinking, is this something college of the arts?
No, it's motorcycle cop. No,
There you go, motorcycle cop.
Confederate CA, Confederate States of America, motorcyclists.
There you go. So actually, so I actually called Marshall University. And I said, did you guys used to be Marshall College? And they said, yes, we did. And I was like, hot diggity, when did you become Marshall University? He said, 1898. Wrong side of the window by 6 years. So, again, it's a class ring, How many people back then could afford a gold class ring? Not a lot. Other items we found. All right, this is the audience participation part, okay? This was his wallet. It's a brown leather wallet. You can actually see on part of it where the inks on the money or whatever he had in there had bled into it and stained the leather. No driver's license, by the way. Okay, this one's an easy one.
Pocket knife.
There you go. This is the brass liners and the pin of his pocket knife. The blades and the sides have long since gone away. Okay, a little bit tougher. Ooh. You're on the right track. Look how big it is. Just about an inch and a quarter.
Buckle for a shoe.
You're closer.
A gallon.
Sock garters. That's the, well, actually down 2 of these. I guess if I told you that might help. But yeah, those are the little snaps for garters on his socks. Okay, part 3 of the test.
Wow.
Don't know? Guess what? I didn't either. In fact, I didn't know until way after this was already all done.
Glass?
Somebody from over at the Historical Society, look at the size again.
Oh, okay.
It's about that long. Somebody at the Historical Society, who?
Araby.
Okay. Found that this is a matchbox, an old metal matchbox. It's from Germany, right? And it's designed after German mailboxes.
Wow.
There, you can actually find them on eBay. Pretty common. And that's what this is. So the leather wallet we got, sock garters. What kind of guy was that? Was that Farmer Brown?
No.
No. Matchbox imported from Germany. Again, somebody's got some, yeah. So we searched a little bit differently. This is Mike Grimm, good friend of mine. He's a retired FBI agent. He also worked as a fingerprint examiner at the Forensic Lab in Roanoke. He and his son are also avid Civil War relic hunters. And they're metal detectors. They're really into that. They came up and gridded off, I think he said 15,000 square feet of the lake bed.
Wow.
And 7 foot wide, but 100 foot long strips. The reason they use 7 feet wide is because when you're walking in the middle of the metal detector, 7 feet gives you a little bit of an overlap on either side. That way you're hitting the sides twice. You don't have a dead area in the middle. And they searched that entire area, and they found all kinds of stuff. They found beer cans. They found bottle caps. They found fish hooks galore. Glasses, cigarette lighters, and 5 bullets and 7 casings, okay, from 32 caliber rimfire ammunition. Now, anybody that knows guns, 32s now, are they rimfire?
No.
They're centerfire. But in the early 1900s, 32 rimfire was very common. Done some research since then and actually have found where they made 7-shot, 32 caliber rimfire revolvers back then. He recovered all these in an area about 30 feet from the body in a 15-foot diameter area, so it's a relatively small area, out in the middle of a lake. So, how could these have gotten into such a small area?
He had to be carrying that pistol.
But he unloaded it, it was on the way down.
Well,
Don't want you to think.
in his pocket.
Well, we never found a pistol.
Oh,
No pistol. Could have been somebody on a boat shooting at beer bottles, or shooting at a fish or something, or shooting at somebody in the water.
yeah.
We don't know. We did a cursory examination down at the lab. They looked at a couple of bullets and they said they were fired from the same gun. How they got in that area, because what this shows, if you know how revolvers operate, you shoot them and then you can unload the empty brass all at one time. That's what this kind of says happened here.
How close to the body?
About 30 feet. It may not have anything at all to do with it. But that was a question that we still don't know the answer to for sure. Dr. Boyd, as I mentioned, he took all the bones and he examined them. Shortly after we got them out, they started turning blue, and that's not color enhanced or anything. I mean, that's about as pretty color blue as you could ever imagine.
Wow.
Yeah. And he said it's some kind of a fungus, and he actually collected samples of it and sent it to his fungus people over at Radford University. And I think they shared it over to Tech, and they never really came back with anything about how it got there or anything like that. It's just never had an opportunity to examine anything like this. Something that's been under that much water for that many years. He concluded after examining the bones from a single adult, he couldn't say what sex, because that's mostly what it was, the pelvis, and there was none of that. No evidence of trauma to any of the bones. There was no bullet holes, chop marks, broken, anything like that. And he couldn't say how long they'd been there, just a long time. So, putting the pieces together, what we did is we took all this information we went public with. That's when it hit the TV, it hit the newspapers. They actually have the copy of the newspaper article over here on in their display. And as you can imagine, tips poured in from all over, and I mean all over. England, Poland, all over the U.S., Mexico, Canada, most of them by email or phone. And some of them, you know, you go over to see, well, I had an uncle that disappeared back in such and such, and you think that could be him? Any reason to think he was there in the Appalachian Mountains of Virginia?
Wow.
Probably not. But somebody discovered what I call the Clemson connection. Clemson University was originally called the Clemson Agricultural and Mechanical College.
And so,
Ah, yeah. CAMC. The cabbage palmetto is the state tree of South Carolina, and it is also one of the symbols that is used by Clemson a lot. So we call them up. We tell them what we have. And we have this ring, and we wonder, could it possibly be from Clemson? Oh, when did Clemson become Clemson University? I don't know, but it was after 1904. So we told them what we had, and they said, you know what? Over in our alumni hall, we have a display case that has sample rings from every year from back in that era. Now, those of you that, well, maybe getting ready to get a class ring, or that have kids that have gotten class rings, you know, you get those things phenomenally personalized. I mean, my son had his name on one side and a saxophone and all kinds of stuff. I think he had an airplane on it. But back then, everybody pretty much would have gotten the same ring. Might have a different color stone, but that's about it. So we asked them if they could send us some pictures of their ring from 1904. So they go over to the alumni hall so they can show up their ring in or whatever. And I don't know all that. Never mind. And does it look familiar?
Wow.
Yeah. Look at one side, you see the CA, and here you can see our cloud and anchor thing. It was a palmetto. Yeah. And I did not take these pictures, that's why that was out of focus. But you can see the MC with the tree on that side also. Lo and behold, on the inside, very same markings. So, now we know this person graduated in 1904 from Clemson Agricultural and Mechanical College. We asked him, can you give us a list of all graduates with first initial S, last initial F, that class? They said, sure. There were 4.
Wow.
So we go back out with this. And so much of this work was not done by us directly. Because people, the antique collectors, the lady that specializes in ladies' compact and cigarette cases, coin experts. I mean, there's just so many people. So we go out with these 4 names, and of the 4, 3 of them were documented well after the 1930s. Figured to go all the way up to 1930 and give us a better window. The latest of which I think was 1973 when we finally passed away. One of them, after he registered for the draft in 1918, disappeared off the charts. His name was Samuel Ira Felder. He went by Cy. This is a picture of his yearbook. Yearbook entry. You can see they put a little interesting thing here. Tips the scales at 148 pounds and measures 5 feet 11 inches.
He was a big man for back then. Huh?
Yeah, probably. He was very tall.
Yeah.
And but 148 pounds, it's good by size 32. Another picture of him from the Clemson era. He was born May 10th, 1884 in a town called Vance, South Carolina. While he was at Clemson, he majored in what's called the electrical course, which I figure is probably like electrical engineering now, which in the 1900s it would have been in its infancy. So we take these, we got a name now for this guy, we go to Learn at Times. Shauna Morrison's one of their reporters. She starts hitting their archives and their databases. And she starts finding a few newspaper articles. Here's one that's dated July the 25th, 1921. And the little letters beforehand, if it says WN, Roanoke Times used to have an afternoon newspaper also called World News. And that's what this was out of the World News. And then have a T for the ones for the Roanoke Times. And you can see S.I. Felter, F-E-L-T-E-R, drowns in Mountain Lake, misspelled the last name. The next day in the Roanoke Times, S.L. Felder, they got the last name right, but misspelled the middle initial. From Troy, New York, falls overboard Mountain Lake and drowns. Following day, a deep sea diver to search for the body in Mountain Lake. Now this immediately sparked a little bit more interest in my mind. How many deep sea divers are there in Giles County today? So how many would have been there in, what we're talking, 1921? Very few. So, and it goes on here, it says procured at Norfolk. So you're talking, these guys probably either worked in shipyards or he was a Navy guy.
Right after World War I.
Right after World War I. So, would this guy come free?
Nope.
Nope. Next day, diver continues to search Mountain Lake. This is another article. This is the whole page here. The reason I printed this big here is because there's a advertisement here for Newark shoes, $3.45 per pair of shoes. And the shoes are very similar to the ones we had there. But the article says Mountain Lake holds body in its grasp. And the next day, the diver still searches for the body of Felder. Never found him. So, we got this guy's name. I get a call one day from a guy who says, "How you doing?" I said, "Pretty good." He says, "My name's Charles Felder." I said, "Oh, really?" He said, "Yeah, I'm a distant cousin of your drowning victim. And one of my hobbies is that I like to study my family history, my genealogy, my family tree and all that. And said, I've got a lot of information about your guy, including his next of kin that is alive today." I said, "Cool." So he told me that Cy Felder was one of 6 children. His mom and dad were John and Viola Felder. There are the 6 kids there, in order from oldest to youngest. See Cy there, number 2. A couple that you'll hear a little bit more about is Keating and Harry. Okay. Now, several of the Felder children, married. They had children of their own, but the lineage died off between then and now. In other words, there was no other kids, except for one. Keating had a daughter whose name was Virginia, named after his sister. And they had a daughter named Emily. And I'd just like to say that she brings the adventure full circle. The last piece of the puzzle. Emily Jackson. This is Emily right here. She lives in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina with her husband David. That's him here, he's an accountant. They have 2 kids and 6 grandkids and wonderful Christmases. Yeah, well,
When was that took? What year?
they gave this to me in 2010, and that's about right.
So,
'Cause that's about how
about
the kids were.
2010, that's Virginia's daughter.
Yes. Yeah, Keating had a daughter named Virginia. Virginia had a daughter named Emily.
She must have had that late in life then, because they're pretty young.
Well, she's got 6 grandkids.
What, did this girl or Virginia did?
No, this girl.
She has 6, and that was in 2010?
Yeah.
This is the second Virginia, right?
This is Emily.
Well, but it's saying.
And Emily has 6 grandkids?
Mm-hmm.
She's good.
Oh, yeah. Their kids are. They just had 2. But anyway, it's a great kid. It's a great family. I talked to her. I spent hours on the phone talking with her. And she told me that she remembers an aunt of hers telling her about an uncle, or her mother telling her about an uncle who had drowned. And she said, she gave me a box of stuff about that. Got it up there in the attic. So, December 13th of 08, Emily and her family, they actually had to come up to Roanoke to a wedding. They stayed at the Hotel Roanoke. I thought, it's a perfect opportunity. So I went to went to the Hotel Roanoke and I did what people would expect me to do. I collected a sample of their DNA. That's what I do. This is her son, Ben, and this is Emily. And I got samples from both of them because I wanted both male and female DNA. Sent all this DNA and the bones down to the Center for Human Identification. Yes, there is such a place down in Texas. That's all they do is they identify human remains.
Wow.
They tested, I forget how many different ways of DNA, the nucleonic DNA. I've got a multi-page report. But basically the bottom line of the report says we can't say yes, can't say no. Largely because of time, the fact that these bones have been underwater for forever, and that we're not talking a direct descendant, we're talking size, brothers, granddaughter, and great-grandson. Those are the two samples we had from those. Other things Emily had, she has a marriage certificate, and I've got copies of a lot of this stuff, including a letter. Remember I mentioned Harry Felder? There was a letter in here that he wrote, we believe, to an insurance company that kind of tells what happened and what's been going on since this all began. I've got copies of it, turn that book for you to look at here in a little bit. There are depositions in there that were taken in Roanoke court from friends and other people that were there. They believe the reason they were done in Roanoke was because, well, you'll see here in a minute. Getting ahead of myself. So, I married Catherine Sehan September the 18th of 1912 in New York City. There's the happy couple. Usually somebody by now says, he's smoking. Right there.
Yeah.
Also, think about 1912. Would you say this was like, lower class people, upper class?
Upper class.
Yeah. Very well.
Driving cars,
Yeah.
Richard.
They lived in Troy, New York. He worked as an electrical engineer for the New York Telephone Company. Yeah, they didn't have any kids. This is a copy of the register from the Mountain Lake Hotel. Buzzing and glad were wonderful enough to dig these out. So they actually had been up Texas for these, didn't they? Aren't these records down in Texas now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Why are
And-
they in Texas?
Archives. This is where they store them at. Here you can see where Mr. and Mrs. A.M. Bowman from Salem, Virginia, Mr. A.M. Bowman, Mr. and Mrs. S.I. Felder, and Miss Nancy Logan all checked in, and apparently one of them checked in everybody because they're from Salem, Virginia. That's where the Bowmans were from. I believe this is one couple, Mr. and Mrs. Bowman here. This is their son. Of course, this is Si and Catherine. And then Miss Nancy Logan, I believe, was this Bowman's girlfriend. That's what we've been able to piece together. They checked into the Sunset Lodge. Around 10:30 that night, the Felders, A.M. Bowman Jr. and Nancy Logan were in the open boat when he fell overboard. And he never came up. Not to speak of. This is some photos they have of the diver that came in from Norfolk. We actually have you'll see I've got a slide up, and it's actually in my book too. There's a hand-drawn map of Mountain Lake with numbered sites where the diver went down, trying to find him, and never did. And here's a map of the lake. There's actually on the back, you can still see even on the slide, you can see it's on the back of the Mountain Lake Hotel stationery.
Wow.
Yeah.
So on that map, where did they find these remains and artifacts?
Kind of right in the middle of it all. I mean, they were all around
You
this.
get all around it.
Yeah. Of course, now when this happened, this is explained in one of the letters, especially one from Harry. Things that made it difficult is there were no lights. When did electricity come to the hotel, Buzz? Do you know? Would it have been there then?
I don't know.
But either way, it would have been dark out on that lake. And there's no way to get reference points, to be able to, take the bearing off of here. Plus, these people are dealing in a panic. They just had somebody off the boat and drown. And, so they, had to kind of guesstimate about where it was. Story continues. Catherine lived on until June 27th of 1964. She never remarried. And when she died, she was buried in a cemetery near Vance, South Carolina, at the Corinth Baptist Church. Size, father, mother, a couple of brothers, Keating, they're all buried in that same cemetery. This is her stone, this is his. And his stone was ground with the date of birth, date of death. It says drowned, body never recovered. Fast forward a couple of years, this is the time frame between when I collected the DNA in December of 08 and now we're in October of 2010. That's how long it took to get all these DNA results back from the Center for Human Identification and everything else. Yeah, it's a long time we worked on this one. Gibbons Funeral Home was kind enough, they donated. If you've never seen one, it sends shivers up your spine. It was an infant's casket. They donated one, and I took his remains down to the cemetery, and he was, interred next to his wife. I spoke of what was presumably his second funeral, because they would have had one point back then, I'm sure. They had his stone reground. They had the word never lined out, and now it says drowned, body recovered September 20th, 2008. I thought that was like so cool. Any questions? I don't know anything.
What was your first big break? I mean, you got all this stuff. You got coins, you got all this material.
Probably the biggest one was when we figured out that it was a Clemson University.
And how did that happen?
Well, also we went public with it all, and like I said, people rolling in. We had all kinds of tips coming in. That's when I was calling Marshall University. And there were all kinds of other colleges and stuff. I call them universities, and I didn't ever think to call.
So
Clemson.
what was the call that led you?
Somebody called and told us that Clemson used to be called the Clemson Agricultural Mechanical College.
CAMC.
CAMC.
And you put it together.
And so we called them, verified that, and then.
So it wasn't Confederate States of America.
Had nothing. It was the good old days.
If you Google the Roanoke Times, Mountain Lake Body, or subjects like that, you'll get the articles from 2008, and there were about 4 or 5 articles talking about the various people who were involved. There was some folks at Virginia Tech who were really intrigued and how they found some of these clues, and they say a little bit more about the piecing the clues together.
They know that he drowned in the lake all those years ago, but nobody ever kept up with it, for people around here to know that.
Actually,
You gotta realize.
actually, was it your mom on video?
It was Mary Link.
Mary Link, okay. Tell us about that.
Mary Link said she was 17 when he drowned, and she went up there, packed her lunch, and watched for him to get it. And she had the pictures that you saw there a minute ago.
That's where this picture
And
came from.
said it looked like the guy had a pot on his head, and he could only stay down 15 minutes. Now, the colored man on that picture was Flem Jackson.
Oh, really?
He told me that he was 21 years old, and he had pumped the air to the guy years ago.
I think that somehow they just forgot about that.
But of course, any sheriff's office records from back then were long since
Yeah.
gone away. Besides, there was no crime. It was an accident. We'll
Yeah.
prove that accident was not a crime, but outside of that, we don't have records of such things. We don't. It's not our job.
Wasn't filed as missing person or.
No, I mean, they knew where he was.
So you don't want me to tell him?
Okay, that
Mark
yeah.
Bellion
That
did.
was the key, the water.
The water was, they estimated that where the body was found, it was probably, 90 to 115 feet?
Oh, where that body was from?
Yeah.
I don't think it was that deep. I think it's probably more about 60.
Okay.
It's still, but it's still down.
Yeah, it's still down there a long ways. Huh.
You don't want me to tell them why you got it, do you?
Oh, we've heard all kinds of stories. Yours was the best one, though.
Well, I mean, when you've been there and done that, you know. It was dark, they were out there, and they said they was laughing.
They've probably been
And he
drinking.
lost his balance and fell overboard, and he was laughing, and he took in the water and didn't come back.
That's
But
very.
lots of times, I didn't go to the bank either. I stood up the boat and put a little more water in the lake.
What time of year was that when he, July?
July.
July. So they were probably up there for summer
Yeah.
retreat or something.
Yeah, that water is cold. Now, people ask, why didn't he float? Okay, on TV, you see somebody get shot or whatever, and they fall backwards into someone pull and they're sitting there and they're floating. Bodies don't do that when they drown. Not real live dead ones. When the body drowns, it sinks initially. And as the body starts to decompose, it starts to produce gases and stuff, which causes it to float. Now, things that can affect how rapidly a body floats. If a body has a lot of fat on it, they'll produce more gases and they'll float a little bit more quickly. Water temperature has a lot to do with it. Anything that he may have had attached to his body, like concrete shoes, think about the old mafia things, or you remember I just touched briefly on the cloth. It's over there in a bag. You can actually hold it up and still see where the pinstriping was. It was a wool suit. Now think about being in that lake in a wool suit. That'd be like having a wet blanket wrapped around you. And plus things that are nibbling on you, starts less there to decompose. Yeah. Several things that can affect it. If you get snagged on something, we run into in the river a lot, is where a body will drown, and it'll wash down and get snagged on something. And that's where we'll eventually recover from. Why didn't the diver find him? It would have been dark down there. There is very, very little water flow in Mountain Lake. And so any touch the bottom at all, and instantly have a cloud of just silt that you couldn't see through. And he could have been as close as I am to Timmy, and just didn't know it. And like I was saying, the diver could go down just for a brief amount of time each time, then he'd have to come back up. Did the best he could with what they had. Anything else? Any others?
I think it was a piece of outstanding law enforcement.
A lot of great details.
There was a media in it, you expanded it, and there you go, you solved the mystery.
That's it. Yes.
The hotel has had some historical notes.
Never found anything, did you, Buzz?
What?
Historical records from the hotel?
Well, there was letters.
Yeah, oh yeah, there was. Go ahead.
Yeah, but the one thing was, as long as I've been there, I've never heard of anybody drowning in the lake. Mr. Lucas, Gene Lucas, who's from Giles, and he'd been with the company about 70 years and started out at Mountain Lake. He'd never heard of anybody drowning. And he started working up there in the 30s, late 30s.
That would have been shortly after.
It's a resort, you're not going to advertise something.
Well, that's true. It's a resort. Nothing bad happens here. This is the copy of a letter from Porterfield. I couldn't make up the first name of it. This was to Harry Felder, which was Si's brother. And in it, he basically just says that he's mailing the personal effects that they left at the hotel to funeral home in Blacksburg. I think that's what he said it was. No, he sent it to his friend in Salem. And some other things I didn't even touch on. One thing we did is we brought a cadaver dog. And these dogs, they're like drug dogs, but instead of finding marijuana or cocaine, they look for dead bodies. And they can actually search out over water. So what we did is after we got it all, everything we could find after Dr. Boyd had done his thing and gotten everything there was to find out of there, we brought a cadaver dog just to see if it would alert. They never had the opportunity to try. And this is Marty and Ann Dowdy. They over in Pulaski County, they had a dog. It's hers. And the dog did alert mildly. It wasn't a strong alert. If there had been any water over it, it wouldn't have. But it did alert on the site. Another day I was sitting in my office. This man and his wife walk in and he says, "I'm Buddy Avenger." "Nice to meet you, buddy." And he said, "I run Avenger Funeral Home in South Carolina." And I remember I just started, he was, older guy, he was the patriarch of the company. And he said that he was had just getting his start when Catherine died. And he said he remembered when she died and ordering that second stone and ordering the second grave spot for him. He remembered all that. And he actually brought pictures up of the church and stuff. It's pretty neat. That's in my folder there too. You can take a look at it. I mean, it was just information from all over, and no one thing. Bob asked me what the biggest thing was that helped us. It was probably finding out that it was Clemson. But if we just knew that the ring was from Clemson, but we didn't have any initials to go on, what good would that have done us? Nothing. Or if we didn't have the coins, tell about how, when this happened. I mean, there's so many little things that individually they wouldn't have solved the case, but put together was, I felt like to use a little puzzle thing. I wasn't going to do a brick wall thing, I did. But, yeah. Any other questions?
You said something about some depositions in Roanoke. What were they doing depositions for in Roanoke?
I don't know the why fors. I suspect probably for insurance, because I'd say he was insured to Giles. Bad choice of words. but I'd say he had quite a bit of insurance. And remember the Bowmans? They were from the Salem area. And I would say they gave their statements in Roanoke Circuit Court because that's where they lived. And I would say they probably were of similar financial status as Si and Catherine. And they could say that they were going to do it down here rather than go all the way to Harrisburg. There's nothing in Harrisburg court records about it at all.
Why didn't they find more bones?
They just,
Skull cap, right?
there was a skull cap.
Well, what skull bone did you find?
It was about this section right here, a little bit off to the right, I believe, and just like the top part of it right there, and then several pieces of long bones. And that was pretty much it.
You don't reckon they went down the tube with the brain?
They may have.
Why would
honestly
you find
think,
just that little amount? But it was sufficient enough to...
I think the reason that we only found that amount was because that's what the bacteria and stuff hadn't eaten up. And that's why we only found the biggest bones. Things that kind of puzzled me, why didn't we find any teeth?
Or pelvis bone.
Pelvis bone's another big one.
Yeah,
Well,
it's a
you're
big
talking
bone.
148 pounds, it's a little
Yeah.
guy. And there's a lot of surface on the pelvis too.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it's almost 90 years too.
yeah, you're talking 90 years. That's a long time in the water. There's little crabs and crayfish doing their thing.
So they only had 2 teeth and
They were crowns.
And what's interesting, to tell you how rich this guy was, I have an extensive background in the dental field. Implants, back at that time, were almost unheard of. Totally. That was very, very rare at that point in time in implants.
See?
If not. And of course, if you notice, they were screw-ins too.
No, they were not screw in. They
No.
weren't threaded.
Yeah.
It was a barbed spike.
Oh, it was driven in.
Yeah.
It looked like it was screwed.
Everybody goes, ooh.
Yeah.
That's what I had.
Oh, that's complicated.
Yeah, they probably would give you some morphine.
Yeah.
Um,
Laudanum.
There's a picture.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Not cool.
Like I said, they've got a lot of the artifacts and stuff that we collected are up there. You can take a look at them. Lots of pictures here. If anybody else has any other questions?